5 persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her husband, screen director Roman Polanski.
The whole thing is very mysterious, but this is what I know.
Authorities say a menacing letter received yesterday by a Vallejo newspaper was not sent by the infamous Zodiac killer. Betsy Gebhardt has details.
That Area 51, the secret Air Force base in Nevada, actually exists.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas.
He's been called the East Side Rapist. He's been called the Visalia Ransacker, the original Night Stalker, and the Golden State Killer.
You have now entered into the House of Mystery, the best in true crime, conspiracy, and alternative history, with Al Warren and Kevin Thompson. KCAA, the stations that leave no listener behind. Broadcasting on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. The trifecta of talk radio for Southern California.
All right, everybody, we are back in the House of Mystery, and today we're going to do something just a little bit different, something that is kind of unique to me. But before we do that, allow me to introduce my co-host. Today I'm being joined by Julie. Julie, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. You know, honestly, Julie, in all the years that we've recorded together, I think one of the most neglected areas of the paranormal is probably palmistry, even though you see it everywhere.
I totally agree. And actually, quite often, if I go to do a reading somewhere, or I know of people that are doing readings, they will often say, almost give me their hands for me to read. And I say, oh, I'm really sorry, I don't do palmistry, and I don't read cards, and I just do what I do. Clearly, it's something that is such an age-old kind of understanding, isn't it? But there's a lot of mystery about it.
You know, exactly. You know, you pass the storefront psychic, and what do they have in a neon sign? They've always got the palm, right?
Absolutely.
But what do we really know about it? You know, actually very, very little. So what we've done today is we're bringing an expert in, and I'd like to introduce the listeners to Vernon Mahabal. How are you? Vernon, welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
So, Vernon, tell us a little bit about your practice, and how did you discover this, and what brought you here?
Sure. Well, you know, I'd like to comment upon the comments that you guys just talked about. Palmistry and astrology are not very well understood, and of course, because of that, not very well respected in our, let's say, so-called modern culture. But it is a fact that in the idea of, let's say, metaphysical or ancient wisdom type of research, the further you go back into history, the more advanced the societies were, such as the ancient Hindus, the Mayans, the Atlanteans, the Egyptians, et cetera, and we find that palmistry and astrology were revered as true sciences in those cultures, and it's only within our, let's say, our atheistic modern academic paradigm that palmistry has become maligned. Add to that, which you two were also talking about, the crystal ball reader, so to speak. And they have done a great disservice to palmistry. Palmistry is a science. It's not just an intuitive art. It's a science. And it's a science of reading the stars. And astrology is a science that has influence over human nature and character and destiny and the rise and fall of cultures. So this science of palmistry and astrology is a very dignified, very great science. And my goal with my institute, my Palmistry Institute is to bring back that respect and that dignity to this science that was at one time respected and revered. So how did I come to it? I came to it as a skeptic, actually, because I grew up in New York, and actually there's so many of those types of gypsy-type palmists and astrologers, tarot readers and crystal ball readers. So I did come to it as a skeptic, and it proved itself to me. I got a book when I was in high school, actually, maybe 10th or 11th grade on palm reading, and I started reading it. I was fascinated by it, and I looked at the hands of my friends. And then I was lucky to meet a palmist who was actually very, very good in New York City, who used to just read hands on the street on St. Mark's and 6th Avenue. And he schooled me for about 6 or 7 years in the Western astrological palmistic system. And it proved itself to me. And palmistry is not about just telling the future. It's not about it. It's not in the world of, it should not be relegated to the world of the psychic reader. It's a science that teaches a person or lets a person know exactly what their life purpose is, why they were born at this time, what is the purpose of their life, and what is their true individuality. Of course, there is aspects of it. Okay, well, you're going to meet your soulmate at this time, or something like that, or you're gonna be able to buy a better house at this time. But certainly, there's that aspect of it. But the real beauty of palmistry is to be able to ascertain one's life purpose, one's reason for being born, and what we've been searching for millions and millions and millions of lifetimes. What is that point that why did we take birth right now? Why did we attain a human body, not an animal body? And a qualified palmist can explain to a querent exactly what they were born to do, what is their right livelihood, and how to help themselves and others. So I hope that it gives a brief summary.
Well, yes, but how do you see all of that in the creases of your hands?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, when people think of palmistry, they most always think of the lines. And interestingly enough, the lines aren't that important.
Oh, really?
It's true. And of course, when most people think of the lines, they think of the lifeline. And that lifeline is commonly thought to be the arbiter of a person's health or death, which is not true at all. The lifeline has absolutely nothing to do with the length of life. It has nothing to do with health. It's the second chakra, those who are familiar with the chakras, and it has everything to do with procreation and sexual life and where to find one's marriages and sometimes even kids. But the lines are not really that important. What are important is that if you look at your fingerprints, look at your fingertips, and then you'll see the famous finger prints. Now, if you look at those, they are formed in our mom's womb at 7 months. If you look at the rest of the palm surface, you'll see that these what we call technically dermatoglyphics, derma meaning skin, and glyphic, of course, meaning symbol. So to a palmist, or for someone who's into forensics, biotech or forensics, these are called dermatoglyphics, not fingerprints. Now, these are completely covering everybody's right and left hand. They're right underneath the lines, and they are the soul's purpose. It's the soul that is sending its message into the brain, and in the brain, the electrochemical computer sends its message into the hand. So these dermatoglyphics are our DNA. They are our genetic pattern. They talk about lifetimes of where we've been, what we've learned, where we've come from. And as I said, they're formed 7 months in the womb. And you can read a little boy's or girl's hand even at 6 months if you can, get them to keep their hands open, and you can tell this person's going to be an architect, this person's going to be a boxer, this person's going to be a yoga master, that type of thing. Everything is written on the hand at 7 months in the womb, and that's what these fingerprint patterns are all about. These dermatoglyphics. So the lines then are kind of like the icing on the cake. They talk about the 7 chakras, and they talk about just in the aspect of the more fortune-telling aspect. In other words, who you're going to marry, where you're going to live, that kind of thing. But the real astrological palmist, the seasoned professional, looks mostly at the fingerprints. And what's interesting is that law enforcement uses these fingerprints for identification purposes only, and they never change, and that's why they use them. But they're completely unaware of the wealth of life purpose information that they hold, such as what a person was in the last few lifetimes, what they accomplished, what their challenges are. I look to these dermatoglyphics scattered throughout the entire palmar surface to see what it is that's holding us back. What were our obstacles and our interferences from previous lifetimes? So the soul is situated in the core of our heart. We are eternal. In Sanskrit, the soul is called Satchit Ananda Jiva Shakti, and it means that we are eternal. We're fully aware of our life, and we are also very happy. But while we're covered with a material body and a material mind, and we feel that we're part of this material world, we forget our eternality. We forget our connection, that we're part and parcel of God. But the soul is eternal, and the symptom of the soul is consciousness, and the symptom of consciousness is individuality. And my job, so to speak, as a palmist, is to let that person know who they are as an individual. What is their true identity, and what they're here to do in this world. And the dermatoglyphics, the fingerprint patterns, are that agency that help one to know exactly what our life work is.
Okay, so you've just said an awful lot, and I'm intrigued. I'm sat here with my hands in front of me, and I can guarantee that Kevin has
yes
been doing and thinking. We have been doing for years, and I was thinking I was doing okay with that lifeline, and now I'm starting to think, Mom, it's not telling me that at all. So let's just say, for example, Vernon, I want to go and I want to find out all of those things. How do I know that the palm reading is going to be undertaken by a qualified palmist? Where's the accreditation bit come in? How do I know that somebody's not going to tell me
what
they think is a great story?
That's a great question. And one needs to be discriminative about who they go to. The first thing to do is look at a reader and see, do they teach? Have they written books? Are they respected amongst their peers? The problem is that you nailed it. There is no real accreditation. Anybody who says they're a psychic or an astrologer can just hang a shingle, so to speak. And unfortunately, in the New Age metaphysical world, the world of mind, body, spirit, there's not a lot of discrimination going on. There's a lot of sentiment and faith, but there's not a lot of logic and reason going on in the New Age world. So people just tend to accept if someone says, oh, I'm a psychic. And a lot of fraud does go on in this business. There's no question about it. But having said that, there's a tremendous amount of there's some excellent palmists out there, excellent astrologers out there who are professional and who take their responsibility to be readers seriously, and want to portray their science in a very dignified and respectable way. So there are about 5% of us out here who are trying to actually bring, like I say, a dignity and a respect to our great science. The interesting thing is that palmistry and astrology, these sciences are meant to be practiced by people who are moral, who stay away from drugs and illicit sex and intoxication. I consider that palmistry is a study for the best minds. It's an incredible study. It's a voluminous study, and it's a study worthy of the best efforts of the best minds. And because of this, because it's such a great science, one can completely turn around a person's life. Somebody may just be working as a secretary or doing some job at Starbucks, and if a seasoned reader gives them a reading, that person can turn their life from just a mundane pedestrian life into something that's enormously not just successful but a triumph. And so one needs to be extremely discriminative about who they go to. Just because a reader hangs a shingle does not mean that they've got the ability and the seasoned professionalism to give a reading. So to answer your question, find those people who are writing books, who are even setting themselves up as, let's say, teachers or instructors within their own peers and brethren. Find those people who are teaching it, and find those people who are respected in society. Don't just go to the local reader at the New Age store. Usually, those are the worst. And find people who are. The other thing is that referrals are very, very important too. Find someone who's been in business, so to speak, for years. We sink and swim by our referrals. So if someone's been a palmist for, let's say, 30 or 40 years, they're doing something right. But be very discriminative, because, as you said before, there is no checks and cross checks in our industry. There's a lack of that. So there is a lot of very, very poor readers out there. Everything from the extremely fraudulent to the very mediocre type readers. But there are a few excellent readers out there who can completely change your life and know how to responsibly read your destiny from your hand.
So having said that, I'm sorry.
And I was just thinking, just for the purposes of listeners out there, that what Vernon was talking about was using a very, very good reading to enhance your life. And the Starbucks reference was just and the mundane job was just about an example of where in any one job, any part of our life, we can enhance it. Just in terms of the qualification, I mean, you mentioned earlier, Vernon, about a qualification of qualified palmist. What would that look like? As a psychic medium, I'm very aware that people can go online all the time and just do an online course and get a certificate through the post, and it's all a load of rubbish. And people, I even quite controversially, I never say to somebody you should go to a spiritual development circle because it's not accredited. I can't tell you they're doing it right. I can only tell you the way I developed. So what's with the qualification? How does that work?
Sure. Excellent question. one of the important things is that people who are good, let's say psychics or intuitives or palmists or astrologers, they generally don't advertise, and they don't push up their ego on their website so much. They just tell you what they do, what their focus is, and that's that. They don't put a lot of endorsements on their websites. They don't advertise. A good reader never advertises. Work comes to them because everything is done by referral. Our business sinks or swims by referrals. So if you're a good reader, you will get clients. So stay away from those readers who prop themselves up and tell you how great they are and how much they're in touch with Archangel Michael and put advertisements all over the place and tell you how wonderful they are. The best readers, they don't advertise. They become famous, if you will, simply by doing their job. The other thing is that a good palmist or astrologer will always be a researcher. In my opinion, if someone's been in this business, if you will, for 10 or 11 years at least, then they're going to add something new to the science. I really, really love to, let's say, see a new book on palmistry, and the writer has, let's say, added some new research to what she's done. I love to see that. But I don't like to see a book where someone has written a book and he's just rehashing everything that came before him. Why even write that book? So a good palmist, a good astrologer is constantly actually learning from higher authorities. They're constantly, like for instance myself, I've been to India 12 or 13 times to research the Vedic understanding of sidereal palmistry. I've placed myself at the feet of many Indian teachers throughout that continent and learned the Vedic system. Just like any other profession, a good guitarist or anything, they're constantly looking for that person that's better than them or that can teach them a different way of doing their art. So a good astrologer or a good palmist will be constantly in research mode, constantly learning. They eat, sleep, and think their science. And that's how you know that somebody is really trying to better themselves and is a seasoned professional. And that's why we see so many, let's say, palmistry or astrological conferences, because it's in the world of palmistry and astrology that these conferences happen. We don't see that in the psychic world. We don't see that so much. And the reason is because astrologers want to hear from other astrologers, or palmists want to hear from other palmists who are on the cutting edge of learning a different technique. I'll buy every palmistry book that comes out there because even though I think 99% of them are not that great, there's always going to be something I'm going to learn. So that's the goal, to constantly keep your mind open, to constantly learn different systems. I opened my mind up to 10 years ago the Mesopotamian system, the Mayan system, the Olmec system, and it enhanced my readings tremendously. So this is what an astrologer or a palmist should do. Constantly researching, constantly investigating their science. And then once they do that, let's say they've been a reader for, let's say, 10 or 20 or 30 years, then I want to see that they're contributing something to their science. Then they're adding something of themselves. And what I don't like to see is the opposite, where people just keep repeating what they've read in other books, and they're not moving forward the science at all. The third part I want to say to you is that in order to learn this science, one must place themselves under the feet of a teacher, a qualified teacher. Otherwise, you cannot learn astrology or palmistry from books. It cannot work. You must have a teacher to help you to understand this science. In the Vedic view, the Eastern, the Hindu view, there was something called Sabda Brahma. And Sabda Brahma means that these sciences such as astrology, are learned only by oral reception. AURAL, oral reception. They're only understood from let's say from teacher to disciple, if you will.
Yeah, oral traditions.
And yes, exactly. And even in the Western tradition, the only reason why I think I sort of know what I'm doing is because I place myself under teachers who were very qualified and very skilled and very seasoned in what they did. So another way to ascertain if you are actually in contact with a good, let's say, psychic or astrologer, ask them who taught them and where and what system do they use. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we do that when we go to, people who fix our car or doctors or lawyers. Where did you learn? What teaching institution did you learn your science from? So why not go to someone and ask them if they're setting themselves as a reader? Why not ask them, well, where did you learn your science? Because this science is so much greater than someone who can just fix your car or fix your teeth or fix your refrigerator. Because these sciences, such as palmistry and astrology, they can completely change a person's life. Mm-hmm. They can make a person become powerful. And, Pythagoras once said, consciousness of our powers increases them. And that's my job, to help a person understand what are their talents, what are their abilities, what are their potentials, and what are their challenges. And as they say, 50% of the battle is knowing what the battle is. And most people in their lives, go ahead.
If a person is looking for their destiny, they're obviously going to seek somebody like you out.
Yes, I know. Yes, because these are not ordinary sciences. We were just speaking about the Vedic idea, the sidereal view of astrology or palmistry. In the Western world, we call it astrology. In the Vedic view, they call it Jyotish. Jyotish means the sacred study of understanding the stars. So the Vedic view, the ancient culture, the Indian culture, of 5,000 years ago, there's a book called about palmistry. It was one of the earliest palmistry books ever written. It's called the Hast Samudraka Shastra. Hast means hand. Samudraka means the signs on the hand, and Shastra means scripture. So just like we call the Bible a scripture, so the Hast Samudraka Shastra, this is a Sanskrit words, that means the sacred study of understanding one's destiny from the palm of the hand. So it behooves a person to seek out someone who knows what they're doing. Otherwise, if you go to a reader, if someone goes to a reader and they're not a good reader and they have very poor habits, you can really hurt somebody.
Yeah, you can create damage out ahead of them.
Yeah.
And they'll just simply walk into it. Now,
absolutely.
Now, going more towards the ethereal side here, Vernon, we're talking about good palmist versus not so good. When you're sitting in front of one, how long should a reading take? And since I'm on that line, pardon the pun, does it really matter if the person is sitting in front of you, or could they scan an image of their palm and send it to you? Because you got me thinking about that when you mentioned police officers and fingerprinting, because I am a law enforcement officer and we take thousands of palm prints and fingerprints a day, and I just would be interested to see what would happen if I sent you one.
Yes, and I have. I got to tell you a quick story. I was. This was in the late '80s. I was teaching a woman palmistry. She was one of my first students, and she was on her 6th or 7th lesson. And then one day she she told me that she was driving in New York City, and she slammed into a police car. And, she got to talk, not a big deal, but she got to talking with the police detective, and lo and behold, he called me up and he said, "Yeah, I talked to one of your students, and I want to learn a little bit about palmistry." So, and I gave a department of the New York Police Department a whole study of being able to see criminality or criminal tendencies from the fingerprints, and you can actually see criminal tendencies from the fingerprints. So, for instance, you're familiar with fingerprints. You know there's a whorl and there's a tented arch and an arch like that. Mm-hmm. So when these ridge patterns are kind of not flowing well, they should look like rivers. They should look very flowing and beautiful. But when the ridges are kind of packed into each other and they look like there's all these like obstacles there's all kinds of mental tension and irritability and frustration on a psychological level. So yes, you can tell if someone is going to actually become a career criminal simply by looking at their dermatoglyphics, their fingerprint patterns. It's fascinating, and I long for the day that an astrologer or a palmist can sometimes, let's say, take the stand and say, well, Mars was in the 11th house when O.J. Simpson was accused of the crime, so he definitely did the murder, that type of thing. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, but it could happen. And in ancient cultures, they actually did this, where they brought in an astrologer and they looked at the chart of the particular time, the place, the circumstances, the people involved, and they set up a chart based on what happened. So it gives you this extra metaphysical perspective on things, not just and in the ancient cultures that astrological observation was taken extremely seriously. We consider ourselves to be a quote unquote advanced society, but we don't. Our modern science, our modern universities, they don't even believe in consciousness. They think that consciousness is a construct of the brain. They don't even believe in the soul. Where is that department in any college or university in America that teaches about the eternality of the soul or the soul? They don't even believe in God. So how can I actually did a class once at Berkeley, and one of the professors came to me and said, I don't believe there's life on any planet. Now, this is a tenured professor at Berkeley College. Not even a child would say something stupid like this. That you look at the billions and billions of stars and you don't think there's any life. We're the only form of life. So our colleges and our universities don't teach the most basic aspect about consciousness, about the soul, about God, and therefore, because they live in an atheistic paradigm, they don't believe in anything beyond things that you can see and smell and taste. And we know, for instance, that the moon has influence over tides. We know that it has, and you're in law enforcement. You know for a fact that people do more crazy things on a full moon night. I've had police detectives tell me that. You know that. Now, why is that? Because the moon is in charge of the mind. It rules over the mind. It's the planet of the mind. And in the Spanish language, they call the moon Luna, and that's where they get the word lunatic. And when there is a full moon, people just tend to act crazy. Not necessarily they do criminal things, but some people get more depressed. Some people steal. Some people, they drink too much on a full moon night. So these are the influences of the planet. And modern academic, modern atheistic academia are not even on first base to understand these very basic ideas. They believe in gravity, but they don't believe that these planets have influence over human nature and character. So it's a very unfortunate thing that we don't teach the science of these stars. The interesting thing is that even the founding fathers of our country, July 4th, 1776, that Declaration of Independence was fully written, and they waited a full 2 weeks for the stars to be in the right positions before they signed that document, because 5 of those signers of the documents were either astrologers or they were familiar with astrology. And Benjamin Franklin was an accomplished astrologer.
Yes, and they were all Masons, and advanced Masons have an understanding of astrology. True fact.
Absolutely, it just goes along the course of that action that we became the greatest country in the world. They knew what they were doing. They waited a full 2 weeks to sign that document, and they did it within a 2-minute period. They knew they had 2 minutes, that Leo would be in a certain sign and Aries would be in a certain sign, et cetera, et cetera. And we just turned out to be the greatest country in the world, So modern atheistic academia will never accept that because they're not so intelligent. But
hang on.
Well,
as a British, England's not too bad either. But just go back a little bit on what you were saying. I'm a psychic.
England's different. England's different. I lived in England for 2 years, and the system over there, the academic system over there, is much more open to these sciences. And in fact, even the Anglican Church, they believe in the mystical aspect of Christianity. They believe that, for instance, the 3 wise men, for instance, in the lore and the history of Christianity, these 3 wise men were wise because they were astrologers. Wizener in Sanskrit means astrologer, and then it became the word wise. So the 3 wise men they knew that a great personality would be born. They knew where he would be born. They knew the impact he would have. And so when people say they were wise, well, why were they wise? How did they work? Well, they used the system of astrology to understand this. So you're absolutely right. England is way ahead because mysticism and astrology and magic and ritual is woven into their fabric. And it's not like the Christianity we have here where it's the work of the devil. It's the only country in the world that feels that.
Fabulous, thank you. One of the things I was really thinking about when I was listening to you is, as a psychic medium myself, I'm very aware that it's not considered a science because you cannot do the same thing and replicate the same situation over and over and get the same results. So I understand that it's not a science. I'm just coming back to the comments that you were making about the fingerprints and how you can tell whether somebody's more prone to criminality or they're going to be a career criminal, with your words. And the studies that have been done to kind of evidence that. I'm just using that one example as a complete novice, but I know our listeners will have picked up on it and they will be thinking, well, how can you say that? Where's the validation? So has there been studies on that?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. With dermatoglyphics, there's many, many studies in the world of health. We can see autism in dermatoglyphics, not necessarily on the fingerprints themselves, but even on the hand. We can see health trends in dermatoglyphics. These are things that can be verified. For instance, I would ask you, both of you, and maybe the listeners in the audience, to we can take a test real quick. We could look at our hands. Put your right hand flat on a desk, and then hold it palm side to up to your eyes and look at which finger is longer, your index finger or your ring finger. Now, many studies have been done based on this aspect of the ring finger, which some of it, and it is coming from Britain, actually. There's been a lot of studies that men who have the longer ring finger have more testosterone, that type of stuff. I've been reading, that kind of stuff came out years ago. But anyway,
don't make it up.
Yeah, hold your fingers on a glass or on a table, and then lift them up gently, and then look at the palm side and notice which finger. We're not looking at the middle finger. We're only looking at the index finger and the ring finger. Now, and this study, I verified this many thousands of times, and if your ring finger is longer than your index finger, your goal in life is to do some type of career that is fulfilling. And if your index finger is longer, your goal is to do a career where you feel a sense of power or control. So musicians typically, let's say, have a longer ring finger. You'll see a ring finger, for instance, that almost rivals the middle finger on a hand like David Bowie or an Ozzy Osbourne. Whereas if you look at the index finger, it's quite the opposite. People who are in the world of, let's say, being a CEO or wanting to be their own boss, or being in any aspect of leadership or directorship, they'll have an index finger that's longer than the ring finger. So with the ring finger, self-expression is more important than financial gain, and for the longer index finger, a person would rather have more control over their surroundings and their environment than just having a career that, let's say, is fulfilling. So I always like to say that musicians have the long ring finger and their lawyers have the long index finger. Now, it doesn't mean that just because someone who has a long ring finger will not be successful. There's many people who have long ring fingers that are successful. Anything from writers to musicians to actors to car designers. But their goal is to have a career that will give them fulfillment rather than just, hey, I just want a paycheck. Whereas we'll find that people who have longer index fingers, they will want a career where they can be a leader. They want to be independent. They want to be in charge. And their fulfillment is actually to feel I have security and stability rather than just I need a fulfilling career. So this is one of the researches that myself and other palmists have done for eons. And this is something that's quite, you will never see a famous musician, whether you look at a Rob Halford or a Bruce Dickinson, they all have long ring fingers. And then when you look at the managers of a band like Judas Priest or Iron Maiden, they will have the long index fingers. So, that type of thing. So these are the things that are very verified. The reason I don't really want to talk too much about the fingerprints, dermatoglyphics, is because it's such an area of looking at the minutia. So it's very difficult to explain.
So what would you say to E.T.? I know what you say.
Well, I'll tell you something. The idea that they have four fingers, a lot of people who I've come into contact with the few who I've come into contact with who have said they have been abducted, and more people who I've read about who come into contact with these aliens. The interesting thing is that I always hear that they have four fingers. Just four digits and no thumb. I find that very interesting because the thumb is not ruled, if you will, by a planet. All of the fingers, the index finger is ruled by Jupiter, the middle finger is ruled by Saturn, the ring finger is ruled by the Sun, and the pinky is Mercury. And throughout the entire hand, there's all the other planets, Venus and the moon and Mars, etc., etc. But the thumb is the only digit that does not come under a planetary rulership. And the reason is because that proves that we have our free will. If you hold up your hand, you'll see that your thumb is kind of juxtaposed to the rest of the hand. It kind of looks like it's like the general looking at what's going on. It kind of faces the hand, if you will. So you can have tremendous talents on your hands, but if you don't have a strong willpower, you're not going to get much done. So the thumb is the human mechanism. It's the human willpower. Tycho Brahe once said, he was a great scientific philosopher. He actually said he said that just the idea that the thumb exists proves to me that there's a God. And Sir Isaac Newton said the same thing. He said that the thumb is a human specimen that, again, proves to me that there's an intelligent creator behind everything. So our thumb is our free will, and palmists look to the free will to look at what kind of consciousness we have. And what we're able to do, and a skilled palmist can look at a person's thumb and just know if they're actually a manifest or just a bum on the street. For instance, I'll give you an example. When someone is, like, let's say, in a coma, or they're homeless or something, you'll see people who are you'll see their thumb sticking within their hand. If somebody in a coma, the thumb is within the hand and the fingers are around it. And someone who's like a homeless person and kind of wants to be, they're not trying to get out of it, the thumb will be sticking very close to the palm. But someone who's a can-do person, like, let's say, an Anthony Robbins type person, or just someone who's got running their own business, the thumb in the course of their daily life will kind of like stick out of the hand and be very animated and very alive. People who are very confident have a thumb that's very it looks alive, and it looks like it's always busy and it's always moving. And people, by way of comparison, who are very cautious in life, or they have a lot of self-doubt or insecurity and are not accomplishing much, the hand sticks very close to actually the palm itself, sometimes actually holding very closely to the palm. And at its worst, when someone is giving up on life, if you ever see anyone who is a drug taker or just wants to give up on life, they're a victim. The pure victim consciousness, the thumb is actually sticking inside within the hand.
Yes, like you're trying to hide yourself.
Exactly. Just like the British say, thumbs up. That thumbs up means I can do it. Thumbs down means it's not going to happen. So a person who, if you're walking along the street, watch people's thumbs. If you're noticing they're holding their cell phone but their thumb is sticking out, or they're talking to someone and they're making they're talking to someone and the thumb is sticking out, that's a person who's very, very self-confident. And the thumb that is 45 degrees or closer to the palm of the hand itself, that's a person who lacks confidence.
You just brought up a whole nother ton of evolutionary questions, but unfortunately, Vernon, we're very, very quickly running out of time. In the last couple minutes that we have, what I'd like you to do is tell the listeners where they can reach you, and tell us a little bit about your institute.
Thank you. PalmistryInstitute.com is my website. And I have a new book out called Talk to the Hand, and you can get that at Barnes & Noble
Yes.
and Weiser's. It's published by Weiser. You can get it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Yeah, Talk to the Hand. And I have a few other books out. But, yeah, palmistryinstitute.com. And if people want a reading from me, they can, even if they live throughout the country, they can just send me their handprints, and I can read them by way of phone call. So, yes, Thank you.
Oh, no. Vernon, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to actually have you back because there's just so much more that we could delve down the rabbit hole in palmistry. But I appreciate
Yes,
you.
I would love to. I mean, I could talk about all kinds of mystical stuff, what's going on. One of the things is if you read hands on a regular basis, you're looking at 2 or 3 hands a day, you can actually see trends in society. For instance, you can see how the economy is going to go. You can see what jobs are going to do well, what jobs are not going to do well. A palmist is also like a social scientist. We can see, for instance, trends that are going to happen 5 years from now. We can see if people are going to wear skinny jeans or they're going to wear baggy jeans. We can see if the economy is going to do well. We can see if the economy is going to do poorly. We can see if people will be elected and people will not be elected. So if you look at enough hands, what they call that in astrology is mundane astrology. It's not so mundane, but it deals with the material world. But if you look at enough hands, you can actually predict the trends and the political the political influences that are going to happen to our world sometimes 5-6 years in the future.
Yes.
So there's palmistry is on many levels. You can read a hand. You could look at a person's life purpose. You could look at the mystical aspects. You could even see a hand of, let's say, George Soros and actually see the evil within him. And you can actually look at a Gandhi or a Mother Teresa and see that these people are they're like angels. So everything is written on the hand.
Well, I'll be scanning mine very, very soon to send it to you. But Vernon, thanks again for joining us here on the House of Mystery today.
Thank you, Vernon.
Thank you for having me on.
To find out more about our show, guests, or listen to a previous show, visit our website at www.somethingweirdmedia.com.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Well, good night.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.
I'll be back.